Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at the Pettyjohn PreDrive 3. Now this is a really long video. I'm going to warn you, you probably already saw that in the timestamp. Please feel free to skip around, look at the chapter markers, look what sections interest you the most. But I got to interview Steven from Pettyjohn. He's the owner, the founder, the one of the main ones now building each and every one of these. And the PreDrive 3 is really a lifelong passion project of Steven's. He's a mastering engineer. He loves studio stuff. That's kind of his background. And he crammed all of that into this pedal. And he'll say it himself. He's done making revisions of these. This is it. This is the pinnacle. This is what he's been kind of just building towards for a really long time. There might be future iterations of this in a 500 series or a rack series or something like that, but this is just his heart and soul in a pedal format. It's a preamp, it's a saturator, it's an EQ. It does so much for the bass foundation of your guitar tone. I absolutely love it. So we had a great long conversation. We geeked out. I hope you just stick around for it. Maybe grab a drink and enjoy it. Put it on the background. But I really hope you enjoy getting to know Steven as much as I did. And go support him at PettyjohnElectronics.com or whatever the link is right here.
Well, welcome to my studio, and looks like
Yeah,
I'm in
man.
yours.
Thank
So,
you. Well, I sincerely appreciate it, Steven. I'm honored to now meet you face to face, even though it's through the internet. But stoked to jump on a call with you and chat about all things Steven and Pettyjohn and all that stuff. So yeah, man, thanks for taking the time. I'm kind of thinking through like the audiences that might not have heard of you or only maybe just a little bit, and so just to kind of share your story. Give me like the elevator pitch of, the life of Steven and how you got to where you're at today.
all right, yeah. So, I've the pedals thing has always been kind of a offshoot of my main. My main thing is just I've just been a recording engineer and an audio engineer really since I was 18. I've been working full time, you know, even through college. That's what I did. So, we're and for the last 10 years, a good majority of that's been mastering. 10, 12 years. Ethereal Mastering is my mastering company. So that's mainly just like an online mastering, and so the gear behind me here is mostly like my analog mastering gear, and then I've recently developed a affinity for analog synthesizers. So I've developed a small collection of those. After you build all the guitar pedals you want, you got to collect something else.
Yeah, for sure. Totally get it. Well, how
But
did you get into that? How did you get into the mastering side of things? Did you go to school for that or just
no,
something?
I never went to the thing I actually went to school for. Ironically, was electrical engineering,
Okay.
and so I did actually didn't finish. I did 3 years, and then I ended up I was in a band, and we won like a national battle of the bands, and we won like a developmental deal, and so we moved to Nashville and did that whole thing, and dropped out of college, moved to Nashville with the band, and then that was right in the like 2008 economic crisis, and like everyone lost all their budget for anything. So we got kind of strung along as they were losing their budgets, and as the economic thing dried up. So I was finally like, I'm this. There's no real future for me in this if I want to have a family. I didn't like the idea of being on the road either. So um, I was like, I'm gonna move out to the West Coast, get back out to the mountains, and do the studio thing because that's actually what I care about. Um, so I got in the studio thing. Been doing that through the whole time. I did all the recordings back then in the band too. But so I moved to Oregon in 2010. So that's when I first landed in Albany and started up my little studio. And not long after that, actually right before I moved to Oregon, I picked up my first analog console from a Craigslist ad in North Carolina. It was this old Yamaha console that actually sounded great. And so basically, I discovered that the EQ on that thing sounded great, and I could run mixes through it, and I could run masters through it, and especially back then, there wasn't a lot of more budget friendly analog mastering. It was like $100 and up for real mastering, or like cheesy. It was bad. The mastering market was pretty weird back then. So I saw a hole in the market and just started running. And there wasn't a lot of great analog modeling plugins yet either. So uh, all of that has since changed. But I got going on. I think I charged $30 a song and just ran people's mixes through the console and gave them some analog love, and then that grew and developed. That went. I did a lot of mixing too. Did some tracking. Bounced around different studios. Built a bunch of my own. Moved a ton. Got married. Had kids. Got divorced. Moved a bunch more. Like kind of went through this whole, midlife crisis. And somewhere in there for the last 11 plus years, Pettyjohn kind of started up, and uh, with kind of the main idea was to use the electronics that I see in my like pro audio gear and try to get them into pedal format. So really the original idea was this pre-drive. So the original pre-drive, what the idea was to use a discrete op amp, like in John Hardy, Jensen, super clean op amp, and use that as like a buffer boost circuit, maybe it's a little EQ. And so that's kind of the whole thesis was, if you're familiar with like in the studio, the idea with like microphone preamps is, for especially for those listening, uh is the weakest link in your chain is your limitation to how good your tone is, right? So like if you're and so that mic pre is that first thing that you're plugging your microphone in, that first amplification stage. So any tonal character that gets changed or added is there forever. Any noise floor is kind of imprinted forever. So like that first step is like super important in the whole process, right? And whatever you lose or you can never get back, whatever you gain you have forever, sort of a thing. So I kind of took that same thought and added it to my guitar pedal rig. I'm like, I had a great collection of guitars already at that point, and I'm like, I'm plugging them into these 13 cent, chips that are in most cheap guitar pedals, Bosses and TC Electronics and all these, and I'm like, and then going into a nice amp, I'm like, there's no way that this $100 pedal is not the limiting factor, and you can feel it, you can sit there and you can play and you can plug straight into the amp and you plug in your pedals and you lose something, right? You lose like there's a feel, there's a frequency response, there's something that you tend to lose, especially back then. A lot of pedals have come a long way since then,
Sure.
which has been
Sure.
great.
Yeah.
I kind of got into this at the beginning of the boutique pedal tsunami, and it's just been, a giant wave ever since, of never ending guitar pedals. But yeah, so the whole idea though was like, if I'm gonna put, these discrete op amps, which they're expensive, they're like $50 a chip, they're what's in, my $1,000 $2,000 mic preamps. But if I'm gonna put that in a guitar pedal, the best place theoretically is to put it right at the beginning, right with my guitar coming in, and then possibly right at the end, or pushing a long cable to a amp or something like that. So uh that's where it kind of started with the pre-drive, and I started with this idea of like, okay, if I'm going to make a first designated first my chain pedal, what are the features I want in that? And that's kind of where I came up with the EQ, the boost, the tuner. The original one had a tuner out and like had like a split, had some things that back then were maybe a little bit more relevant, things that have there's trends have kind of changed a little bit on what people, how people set up their pedal boards these days. But anyway, so that was the original one. We went through, now did a whole bunch of different overdrive pedals, did a compressor and EQ pedals also, and then almost closed the doors post COVID because we had while I was going through a divorce. We lost our supplier on our custom boxes. Like stuff just got so expensive. Like it went from like $15 a box and a 3-week lead for the metalwork to like $50 a box and a 6-month lead with like minimum order of 100 at a time. And I'm like, I just can't run my little business with that. So we actually didn't come out with anything for almost 2 years because of that. And I was just like, I don't even know if I want to keep doing this. Like the metalwork was always the biggest always the most hard thing to figure out, especially out here in Oregon. There's just not very many people doing it, you know. So, and if you ship metalwork, it's expensive. So it's like, you know. So I was like, and so I was really trying to do stuff local, and I really liked their custom boxes, but it just got to a spot where it's too expensive. So, um, that kind of brings us to where we're at now, which is where I decided to go ahead and fire it back up again using a more readily available aluminum rectangular box, the cube box, and I got a laser so I could do my own labels in house. We're doing them on wood right now, but we can do them on other stuff too. We'll put be experimenting with like plastic and different things like that. But the wood look is kind of fun, and I do all of those myself, like literally by hand. You know, my laser cuts them out, and I sand them and finish them 3 coats, and it's a labor of love. You know, I pick out the grains, so I try to get the best grain orientation. You know, and I always love working with wood and stuff, so it's fun for me, but a little bit labor intensive, but that's okay. It makes a product that comes across, I think, as a little bit unique, and they're well loved, you know. So this newest iteration, the 3, I swear I'm never coming out with another version of this pedal. Like it's done. It's over. I did everything I could possibly think of wanting to do in this pedal on this version in the size constraint that we have, and I'm just like, and I absolutely love it, and there's nothing I can think I want to change about it, and I'm like, I'm not doing another round. It's like this is it, you know. So also this line of pedals, we got the 3 overdrives are out now too, uh
Yeah.
and I'm gonna just be doing these till I'm done selling pedals. Like that's I've just decided I'm done redoing them. I'm not doing the hamster wheel. We're gonna do some other pro audio stuff and some other.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, could you imagine yourself doing a rack unit or something like that,
Yeah,
or a 500
absolutely.
series or something like
So
that?
the whole idea with the relaunch, we also did a series of direct boxes this last year that are with Synmag transformers and the discrete op amps that we use in the PreDrive, and they are awesome. But the whole idea is to kind of have a streamlined analog line of pedals, and then move into pro audio. So yeah, so the idea is to try to, that's really where my passion is. You know, I'm a guitar player, but I spend way more time working as an audio engineer. So the guitar pedals were always just like, I want guitar pedals that match my audio engineering gear. And you know, and to be honest, I understand that that's not for everyone. Like it's a niche, you know, it's a high end niche. The parts are super expensive, and the applications maybe a little bit unique. So, and I just decided this round I don't really, I'm not trying to appeal to everyone. I'm trying to make the best product that I want to use, and let's see if other people out there are like that too. You know, at this point, been doing it long enough. Like, and the other thing I always say is I want to make something that I can't go buy. Like I feel like there's something I want that I can't go buy. So for me, that even if it's a very small hole, at least there's maybe a hole in the market there for something that I don't want to just race someone else on the same product. You know, that's at least my goal is to try to make something unique, and have my own little corner of the world to just do what I do with sound, and invite other people into that and see if they connect with it, you know. But yeah, this year, I mean, I'm open to talk about it. I've only really got 3 more pedals on the horizon. And they're one of them is the our a relaunch of our Crush compressor, which has been long awaited. I didn't ever do a version 2 on it cuz it was just too hard to do back then. Um it's the most complex product I've ever made, and it's also uses a ridiculous mastering grade discrete VCA in a pedal. Like it's way overkill in pedal, but there's like literally forums about it, you know, for bassists and guitar players saying like this is the best compressor ever. I'm like, well, it should be like $1,000, you know, sort of a thing. And I sold back then I was selling it for like 329 or 349 or something stupid like that. So you know, it's like I wasn't hardly making any money on those, but this new box gives me enough room to do it right, and the idea will be to also do a like a 500 series and a rack unit version of it too, you know.
Yeah.
So and the same thing with the pre-drive. There'll be some sort of, if all goes well, if we survive the year, not, you know, hopefully, then there'll be some sort of 500 series and rack unit version of the stuff. So and then so we got the compressor coming, and then I am looking to do like an acoustic preamp and a bass preamp. So you know, like kind of EQ section that's tailored for each of those with the integrated DI, and those are two things that I've always wanted to do that I feel like there's just not one out there that I actually want to buy. There's a few okay ones, but I don't want to buy any of them. Like they're not. I'm not excited about any of them. So I'll take my shot at it and see what the world thinks about it, and enjoy it for myself if nothing else.
That's great, man. I love it, Steven. Yeah. I think that's the way to go these days, man. I think with so much competition out there, I think that's at least what I've seen. Those who can make a product that they're just personally super excited about and that they believe in, and it's something that they want to make for themselves. I think it has success.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things might find this interesting is that you know, up until this generation, I've always been a tube amp guy. And then, you know, right around the time we took that break a couple years ago, I got this whole ToneX thing came out, and I was like, I actually think this sounds pretty good. And I started getting some aftermarket profiles, and then yours showed up, and I was like, I don't know if I've got 3 amazing tube amps, and they're all sitting here broken. Like, they just need to go to the shop. And I'm like, I don't wanna spend $400 getting them fixed because my $400 ToneX sounds better, in the studio, you know, like, and I've got, you know, you can probably see it, but I've got nice I got 1,800 watts of triamp studio monitors sitting here in a great room, and so I run it in stereo, and it
Mhm.
sounds freaking huge. Like, it sounds awesome. And I
Yeah.
super inspiring, and I don't have to deal with a tube amp. And it's like so these pedals, that's one of the big things, is that they've been developed really almost primarily through the ToneX platform, and there's a neural. I got a couple of the others kicking around, but the ToneX is my favorite right now. And so yeah, you know, and it reveals a couple different things about a circuit because I voice this, so I'm voicing them in my studio here through the ToneX, and I basically, when I'm working on voicing the pre-drive and these other overdrives, I'm cycling through all these different amps in real, you know, like I got them all loaded, and I just like cycle through them all. I cycle with all my guitars, and I feel like I get this great, you know, uh, what's the word? I'm able to sample all of these different types of amps, first of all,
Yeah.
and then I'm also hearing them in maybe a little bit more uh higher resolution than just speakers just don't have that great of frequency response, but they're also blowing air past your feet, and they're loud, and
Mhm.
you're compressing in your ears, so you get a real honest view of how the circuit's sounding. Like,
Yeah.
it's not actually very kind to the circuit. Like
Mhm.
a good tube amp actually is very forgiving of
Mhm.
I'm assuming you've experienced this, but like if you plug in like a cheap, say a cheap tube screamer, or even a mediocre tube screamer or something like that, to a tube amp, and you plug it into a, you know, modeling or something, it
Mhm.
doesn't sound the same. You know, it's
Right.
it's
Right.
it's not as enjoyable through the modeler, right? So
Uh-huh.
it sounds harsher, and you hear all the
Yep.
little crackly things and things that like kind of get washed smoothed over in a tube amp. They're still kind
Yeah.
of there, and those little
Right.
nuances. And so it was fun for me to voice these pedals in this kind of modern age of like getting all these little annoying things that I could kind of hear in my tube amp, but I wasn't really sure. And then like really dial into the details using the profiles,
Yeah.
and I think a lot that will connect with a lot of people. My experience, if it sounds good through a profile, it sounds amazing through a tube amp. Like,
Yeah.
it's not always the reverse though, you know, is
Mhm. Mhm. I see what you're saying.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I kind of view that as a limiting factor. It needs to sound good through the harshest environment possible,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so yeah.
Well, and I think that's a great point, to bring up too, and something on my board personally. I'm such a fan of always on pedals because whether it's an EQ or some sort of buffer or some sort of saturation thing, because if you are trying different captures, different profiles, I need a way to be able to like tailor my guitar kind of to those profiles, easily and
Right,
quickly, especially if I'm changing guitars or changing profiles, whatever.
right,
Having something that I can not just affect, like EQ is super important, but then also like the level of saturation, which this can do,
right.
and sort of just that overall, like, what's your base fundamental tone before anything else happens,
Sure.
and I've always been seeking out like those different kinds of pedals. I've tried a ton of them, and so when I saw this, pre-drive, I've always kind of had my ear to your stuff because I had the chime way back in the day and I loved
Okay.
that, and I kind of use that as an always on sometimes, and
Yeah.
I went back and forth, and but then when I heard you guys were redoing this guy, it was clear that that was like, that's the thing that I really am looking for. It's something that can add a boost if needed, add some saturation, add some EQ, but more specific EQ than, like for guitar specifically, and something that is high quality because again, I want that bass tone to be as good as humanly possible before, you start moving on. So,
Well, and that's something that I still find, like with the ToneX pedal or even the neural stuff or any Kemper especially. I actually don't. I mean, it's gonna sound kind of snobby, but um, technically their inputs and output stages are not that great. They're still kind
right.
of cheaply made mass
Yes.
produced electronics. So I
Yes.
feel like you still get that boost of having that high end first buffer preamp going into those circuits because if you plug right into a Tonex, for instance, that first stage is loading your guitar, and
Mhm.
so you're gonna get that's going to load differently on different guitars, and you know it's a complex impedance matching situation, and so that's something that I feel like the pre-drive's been really developed to do is consistently impedance match between different guitars. And then some people get confused by it, but like the buffer knob, the or the input gain it used to be called,
Yeah.
it's just a clean gain on the buffer. So a buffer is just a unity gain,
Got it.
impedance uh uh
Yes.
stage. It's just a discrete op amp, a unity gain buffer. But a buffer you can add gain to it, and then it's technically a preamplifier
Yeah.
at that point. So
Yeah.
another way to think about it is a preamplifier is just a buffer with a gain of more than one, right?
Got it.
Okay,
Okay.
and a
Yeah.
buffer is just a preamplifier with a gain of one, and so you get these like terms that eke into that from the technical world into the player world, and they're like, what does that mean? Well, in this case, if you have that buffer knob all the way down, it's just a unity gain input. And so the idea is, okay, I'm playing a Les Paul, I break a string, and I need to go to my Strat. All of a sudden, I can just with one
Mhm.
knob bring the
Mhm.
gain at the very first stage up to the same input as my Les Paul, and all my tone and all my gain staging will be consistent. And it's like that was the string break. I call that the string break pedal knob. It's like that's my
Yeah.
my Hail
Yeah.
Mary knob, that little buffer knob. And I mean, you can do other fun gain staging things with it, but that's really kind of the
Yeah.
idea is that you can,
Yeah.
from the very beginning, gain match different guitars with different pickup outputs. And
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I finally like had, some time last week to like do my own kind of personal deep dive on this guy. I don't know, for me I was playing with placement of it, and for me I like functionally I really like it after my compressor because I want that boost to be able to not just compress more, you know?
sure.
And so, but what does that do? What's the consequence of that if my signal's not hitting this first?
I will say this on this generation of pre-drive, it works better than the first generation does. Like it works fine anywhere in the chain.
Okay,
Like
got it.
it's going to be totally functional anywhere, including at the end. Um, it's what you lose is arguably the buffer interacting with your guitar, and then
Oh,
then
got
the tone shaping that you then send down chain from there, right?
okay.
And so, um, And the way that I run it is actually that I run my boost in drive mode, and so I really only run it with like 1 or 2 dB of boost. It's more of a
Yes.
saturation
More of a
increase.
saturate.
Yeah, so it's more of like a low gain thing, and sometimes I just leave that on all the time, or I turn it off to like clean up my chain, you know. But so I don't the way I use it, I don't actually use it as a big old fat boost, you know, volume boost, but it can be used that way. So
Yeah.
that's always been the issue with some people with a pre-drive is having a boost at the beginning into a compressor.
Yeah.
Um, now what I've always done for this, I personally like love having a boost into drives, like because if you
Mhm.
uh think about it, it's just like turning up the gain knob on your drive. So you can set your
Mhm.
drives lower and then use a boost in front of them to effectively turn up the gain. And you're going to hit them harder. So you're going to get some compression and you're going to get some volume. So
Yeah.
if you set that right, it can be really nice for lead work or just a higher gain channel.
Yeah.
Compressors always are the tricky thing. If they're a peak compressor, they're even trickier because they really respond if you're using it as a clean boost to that clean boost hitting them.
Mhm.
If they're an RMS compressor, they respond less pickily to that. You know, like you can kind of and so that's what my compressor was. So it actually worked pretty good with the after the pre-drive. Actually that crush compressor because it's an RMS compressor worked good after all my over after the overdrives. Like I actually use it
Mhm.
as like a glue. So you could kind of set it low ratio and it would be like a kind of like a uh well, whether it's a mastering compressor or just like a your amp kind of hitting saturation and starting to compress, you could kind of set it that way,
Yeah.
it was really cool way to set it. But um, the other thing you can do is just set your compressor really light, and then when you hit the boost, you're gonna you're gonna get
Yeah.
extra compression. It's for a solo, so you get more sustain, and I think there's some validity to that because I feel like when you're playing big chords, you're sending a lot more signal, and so I would set my compressor on the low without a boost for big
Mhm.
chords, and then when I want to do single leads, I would hit that boost and then get the compression that
Mm.
sustain out of the
Yeah.
compressor. Now, but that's gain. There's a gain staging dance there, right? Like you
Yes.
really
Yes.
and not every pedal is gonna take that well. That's actually been part of the issue that I run into often is because my pedals they actually have an internal custom power supply that has 36 volts of headroom, and so
Gotcha.
yeah, so they boost your 9 to 15 volts to plus or minus 18 volts basically, which is
Yeah, I got it.
a
Yeah.
lot of headroom,
Yeah.
which means it's very hard to actually peak them internally. But
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
your poor 9-volt pedals downhill are just in
Yeah.
for a real hard time, you know? So
Yeah. Yeah.
if you run them hot at all, like, cause you can run
Yeah.
them real hot, but they
Yeah.
will, they will, I mean, I can very easily, my pedal will be clean, sounding great, and I turn on a delay pedal, and all of a sudden my delay is like distorting because I'm just
Yes.
running
Yes.
so hot of a level that
Yeah.
like that my pedals can output because
Yeah.
of that extra
Yeah.
headroom that
Yeah.
the delay especially digital pedals have real low headroom, so you have to
Yes.
watch, you know, how hard you hit stuff.
Okay, so just for, those maybe just like first getting introduced to the pre-drive, it kind of looks intimidating. So maybe we break it down and,
Sure.
show how it works. So like in its basic function, what's like the very first thing would just be what this one would turn it on and off, right?
Yeah, that turns on and off the active circuitry. So
And
it's
so
true
what's
bypass. The reason I went ahead and did true bypass on this version, I've done some versions with and without it, um, is that there are a couple corner cases where the first pedal in your chain being a buffer isn't ideal. And the main corner case is with like some vintage fuzzes. They like to go first, and it is a very good buffer, so it does well better with most vintage fuzzes than some, but there are still a few that people would like prefer to bypass it. The other reason is because I think having a sanity check is good. You know, like what
Mhm.
is this thing actually doing?
Yes. Oh yeah,
Because it's
totally.
such a it can be very transparent, and it can
Yeah.
also has so much gain that you're like, where's unity? You know, and so like being able to check that for gain staging and just to check what am I actually doing to my tone with this thing, you know, I think is important to have a sanity check. So most people would leave that on all the time, though. That's kind of the idea.
Yeah, I would definitely leave it on all the time. But this is so you're saying if I turn this off, the EQ still works?
Uh, no. So if you turn it on, so in buffer mode, the EQ is active. The only thing not active in that first buffer mode is the boost knob, the big knob in the middle, and then if you have it set, the level knob. The level knob in the upper left corner. Yeah, so there is an internal toggle that makes that level knob on all the time too, but I ship it stock so that you can use the level knob only with boost mode so that you can kind of create that low gain overdrive leveling so you're not just boosting to high heaven. Does that make sense? So there is an internal toggle to change that feature. The way it's set up, the drive mode or clean mode is actually always on. But in buffer mode, it doesn't really drive. But you can actually hear it impact the tone just the smallest amount. If you especially if you crank the buffer input gain, you can you can get it to start just barely starting to go. Um, but it's designed to basically be transparent even in buffer mode so you can like leave it on and yeah.
So to recap, so this turns on basically the full EQ suite, the high cut, the low cut, the level or the buffer, and this switch is engaged
Yeah.
in the blue mode, essentially.
Yes, exactly. In blue mode. Yep.
Okay. And then so when you add the boost, the purple, that adds the level and the boost control.
Right, right. So you're just adding this extra gain stage basically.
Yeah, it's just a simple gain stage, but then the switch also makes a bigger difference.
Yes, that's when you start hearing because the idea with that harmonic drive circuit is that the more gain you push into it, the more it's going to open up, right? So that's just the whole idea. Yeah.
Okay, so let me just for the sake of showing people, I have I think I'm running my Dr. 80 capture or something, my favorite capture. So totally clean would be this. I have a little reverb and no compressor though. So then turning this on.
You definitely got some gain on that input buffer.
Yeah, so you're saying this should be unity?
Yeah. Pretty close. The thing
To my ears, it's like it cuts a little bit.
it
It's
might
almost
cut.
like
Yeah, it might cut just a hair too. It kind of depends. Do you have any EQ going, or is
I
it
don't.
is the low cut?
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's
so
you're right.
that's
You're right.
taking a little bit of your signal there.
Oh, you know what? And that's funny because I was totally hearing the low cut too.
Now here's the thing: is that without that in there, you're getting some loading. So you're gonna hear when you add in the buffer, you're gonna get some effects of it correcting impedance mismatches. Your cables, your long cables, and all that stuff will clean up. So you'll kind of get a little high end back often. And
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna
No, I
stripe it up.
definitely hear like a little clarity back for sure. I absolutely love the low and high cut because that's like all the EQ pedals that I've ever used. I think with the exception Empress makes like a crazy EQ pedal that has a whole bunch of gnarly features on it. But there's not a lot that have like the high and low cuts, and to me, I just find those like incredibly helpful. Um,
Me too.
yeah, especially the low cut. I feel like as you know,
Oh yeah.
we start stacking compression, adds kind of more low end, and that then you can kind of take that out if you need to. It just cleans things up, and if it's just like a spiky high thing, you can just shave off, whatever on the high end. It's just super useful. So yeah, I love that. So then you have so basically yeah, high cut and low cut, high cut, and then 3 bands of EQ with selectable frequencies.
Yeah, 3 frequencies per band, and they're all 3 are bells. they're
Okay, bell curves.
they're
Okay.
bell curves. Yep.
And then what's the dB like up or down on these guys?
It's approximately 8 to 10 dB, depending on the frequency.
So talk me through like the reasoning behind the frequencies.
Yeah. So obviously there's a lot more frequency than 9 frequencies, but in a semi-parametric EQ like this, you have where you don't have a sweepable frequency pot. You know, the idea for me is to preset my favorites for all of you guys to limit, partly because there's something to limiting the options to really good options to make things go quickly.
Hmm.
Right.
Oh, and
and
I
then you
appreciate
and
that.
then you can optimize those settings. So this EQ, the whole, it's actually a full 5 band EQ that works together with the low cut and the high cut. But and it's definitely designed from a studio perspective. So and it's designed from like a high-end analog studio perspective, in that I'm not trying to do things. I'm trying to do something special. So the way I view analog gear these days, 2026, is that there's so many amazing plugins, and like the EQ in the ToneX, for instance, is a great EQ. It's a studio grade plugin EQ. Super good at clean, uh, if anything, sterile digital equalization. Right. So the whole goal of having an analog EQ, I view this in my mastering. I don't have a hyper clean mastering EQ. I have colored mastering EQs that I feel like I can't get a plugin to recreate. So when I go out of my computer into the analog world, I'm getting something special, and that I can't recreate. And so that's my goal with this EQ, actually, is to create something kind of special. So each one of those settings on the EQ is kind of its own little microcosm of something special that have been playing with this particular circuit now for about 7 or 8 years in different forms. And so each one of those kind of represents a special place for me. Um, I kind of have where I leave it most of the time, to be honest. And and it's kind of I call it kind of my mastering curve. It's something I do a lot with my mastering EQ, and that's in the with the low end. I do the lowest frequency is on, I think it's calls it 75 on the label. All right, so that's below a low E note. That's like maybe a C or something like that. Um, and so, but the way that that's voiced, it's voiced with a very clean, clear low end that's very robust, not muddy. Like, I spent a lot of time trying to voice that to be able to boost slightly to add body to something without it being muddy. And to specifically work with the low cut, so I can run some low cut and then boost over top of it, because it comes after the low cut, and you get this like interaction of the curves. That's like, you get that in like some Pultec EQs and things like.
I was gonna ask if that's a Pultec thing. Yeah, yeah.
And so the idea is you can tighten the sub, but then add some body without it feeling muddy. So it's actually a pretty tight, narrow bell that is voiced to give you like a really clean low end. And it's all three of these, in my opinion, are best boosting. Uh, I when they cut, they sound fine. To me, the magic in an analog EQ is when you boost, because you're adding energy into the signal, right? So a well-designed analog EQ, whether it's a console EQ or pedal EQ, for me, is there to be additional, where the filters are subtractive. So I like to boost at that 75. I almost never move it from there, but there's 150 and 250 are in there too, in case you want to add more. Basically you're moving up the fretboard on the low notes as you're boosting. So if you got a thin strat you want to boost, or really want to just get something thick, you can do it. Or if you conversely, you can cut there as well. My recommendation is to cut with the low cut and then try even a minor boost, even just a 1 or 2 dB boost at one of those frequencies, to kind of get a bigger sound that's not muddy. So that's the goal. There is a big tight low end.
I think that's a super helpful point for everyone to know, because honestly, like my gut approach to EQ is always subtractive. So, you know,
Absolutely.
the way I've been
Especially in the
trained and the way
box
I
for
taught.
me, I'm always subtractive in the box.
Right.
Yes,
Okay.
and so
So this is just different. Yeah.
in analog and all of my analog EQs, I'm like 99% of the time I'm additive. And it might only be a half dB, but there's something that, and I use a lot of inductor EQs, and they so you're basically resonating at that frequency. So you're creating this little bit of magic resonance that's actually creating that boost. And there's just something that makes that come alive, that is special. And so that brings us to the mid. The mid band on this EQ is an inductor mid band. It uses
So what does that mean, inductor mids?
so there's basically two ways to make a bell curve with electronics. One of them is you use this gets nerdy really fast, but an LCR circuit or an inductor capacitive resistive circuit. So basically, you create a little the inductor and the capacitor basically bounce energy back and forth at a resonant point, and that creates the boost or the cut. So the cut, they're bouncing back and forth, and they're phase canceling basically at that frequency, or they're phase adding. So that's kind of super nerdy way to think about it. But you're basically creating this little spot between these two components that store energy, where they're sharing it back and forth and creating a resonance peak. And so you can do that with an inductor, which an inductor is they're it's basically just a coil of wire around a magnet. And so it's similar to a transformer in that it's operating on the same principle that uh, of wrapping wire around a magnet. And so basically that magnetic core, once you add a certain amount of energy into it, saturates or it resonates, and it does these things that our ears can find musical that are not ideal. So they're those non-linear things that our ears like, and they create harmonics, and they create softening of the pick attack, or they create these different like little energetic moments that we interact with as musicians and go, oh, that sounds cool, right? So where the low band and the high band don't use inductors, they use the other way of creating a peak, which is it's actually a simulated inductor, and you just use what's called a gyrator, or just a little basic buffer circuit uh, that's simulates what an inductor does, but it doesn't have the magnetics, so it's cleaner. So basically, the taking the magnetic inductor out creates a cleaner, more natural sound, and putting the inductor in creates what we associate with more of vintage or musical sound on average. So like all the old Neve and API, a lot of the API, but all the old Neve, like 1073, 1081 console EQs. Those are all inductor EQs. Yeah. So
Is this I was gonna ask earlier, is this based on any like Neve or API, or is it kind of your unique thing or
it's not based on any of those per se, other than that it shares an inductor in that mid band. Um, yeah. So the topology is it, they all are fairly similar. It's an EQ circuit is more or less a textbook circuit. There's like 100 different ways to tweak it. There's 1,000 different ways to tweak it, but there's really only a small handful of different ways to make an EQ circuit. And so people, but I didn't like look at a Neve circuit. I actually, uh, basically this circuit I've been experimenting with is one of the simplest circuits you can do to make an EQ that I got off like an audiophile website of talking about why they liked this particular one. And I've just been playing with it. And so it's actually the same circuit with the inductor and without it. I'm just replacing the inductor with the simulated inductor. And so uh I find the inductor sounds the best in the mids, because the mids to me are where like this magic happens in music. And whether it's like tape saturation or whether it's in mic pre, there's something that happens in the mids with magnetics that is just special. So I've been putting those in all these. Each of my pedals and each of these 4 pedals all have the inductor mids. They all are voiced differently with different inductors and with different capacitors. So the the parts and where those frequencies are all change like the character, how steep and narrow it is, how wide it is. Um, and so in this case, the highs and the lows are the simulated inductor, and they're cleaner, and the mids is that kind of real vocal inductor. And so there's 3 frequencies on that inductor mid. It, there's like a, was it 1.5 or 1.2?
Yeah, 1.5, and then 475, and then 825.
Yeah. And those are just kind of approximates. You got to remember these parts are like a 20% part. So like, the tolerance on that, it's going to move it a little, like you can't even, unless you hand measure all of them and throw a bunch of them away, like, but so it's a nice wide curve. The idea here is, what I think about those 3 frequencies is the lower one is kind of that low A string range. Like, so it's frequencies that are kind of focused around that string, that range, low A string, low D string, that D string kind of on the lower register down there. So you can kind of bring out those lower, low, mid notes on your guitar.
For sure. I know. I was playing with this the other day, and I'm like, I mean, like setting it on 475 or on this pedal at least, and cranking it is just kind of like this. It adds like, I mean, probably it's just saturating my amps, but it like adds a ton of like, like drive. Like,
yeah. So you're basically pushing 10 dB boost around that lower mids of your guitar into your amp. Yeah, so it's like that's a lot of boost,
It is. It is. Yeah, for sure.
And so it's doing its own thing, and at that much boost, the inductors do it. It's not clean, it's talking, but you're also gonna if your amp's on the edge of breakup, that's enough to push it over. Yeah. But and then the 7 or the 825, I think is what I wrote on that over. That's my personal sweet favorite most of the time. And that to me is just like that 12th fret, your solo just speaks, like you can just make it like pop out of the speaker at you, and all those individual notes just like light up. And so I use that a lot. And then the upper one is more like a pick attack, like an upper pick attack. If you go to the 0.5, if on like a real dark guitar, sometimes that's nice to like bring out some pick attack. That's how I kind of think of that one. It's kind of above your notes, but not quite into the harmonics.
Oh yeah, yep.
For me, the vocal range of the guitar is on that 825, and I usually just basically just run like a 2 o'clock, just a little bit, just on each of them, and then on the highs I do it on the toggle to the right. Is that 10K? Oh. Toggle to the
6K?
right. Oh yeah, 6K. That's 6K. Yeah, that's like the 10K. You almost can't hear a difference because it's so high in most electric guitars. You can hear it more on. Sometimes you can hear it if you have real. There's times you can hear it. There's times you can't. But there's also, you can use it on acoustics and other things. The 3K is kind of the harsh range, like, so you might want sometimes you want to take that out. That's kind of why that's there, a little duck if you're kind of zipping through. But that 6K for me is akin to a guitar airband, and the 10K can be used this way too. But I think of it like on mastering, you're boosting above all your strings, so you're boosting kind of the harmonics, and you're just getting some air, like some sweetness. So that's voice to like add sweetness just a little bit without being harsh. The idea there is, so if you do all 3 of those, like you boost the lows a little bit, boost the mids a little bit, boost the highs a little bit, you kind of get these 3 sweet spots around at the extremes, and then right in the voice in the middle, so you don't hollow it out. And then low cut and high cut to taste, around that. And I basically just leave that pedal like that all the time.
Yeah, no, that's great. I was gonna ask if there's a secret Steven setting, so that's where we're at. Here we go. Yep.
Yeah, so I'll use more high cut on a brighter guitar or brighter amp, less high cut.
all of them boosted, obviously that's going to add some gain.
Does add some gain, yeah. So you can back it down. Yeah, I run mine, and I'm not afraid to be above Unity a little bit. Like, give it some juice. Most guitars are pretty low output, so. Yeah, it should just to me it just feels like a little less anemic, a little more forward, and a little
Oh, for
bigger than
sure.
life.
It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
Yep.
It can be a little hard to come through. I don't expect that small of changes to come through my laptop here. Like hardly at all. But in the room, under the fingers, yeah, yeah. It's a it's a subtle thing, and that's the thing too. Is like if you're doing something that's always on, you don't. It's not a place to be making big moves.
Sure.
The
Sure.
idea is to do these subtle sweetening moves that you can leave always on because they're not so extreme. Now you can crank the knob and do something extreme, in a session or something. But if you're using it as an always on, most people aren't going to need to get all that crazy with it, right?
Yeah, if you need to get all that crazy, change your amp profile or something.
Exactly. Yeah. So the idea is not to replace your amp EQ. The idea is to have a sweetening analog thing to really shape your guitar into like the best thing it can be before it ever gets to any other pedals. So
I love that. Yep, I love that. So then this guy just, so that adds, I mean, so this is, now that I realize that, this is always in no matter what, but, kind of what I was playing with is once you add this boost a little bit, for those who like to run more edge of breakup, and if they're playing a clean profile, this really kind of gets you there.
and it's got some compression in it too. It's not just like it's definitely got a lot going on in how that interacts with your guitar. I find it, and I wouldn't even call it a full overdrive. Like it's the pre-drive. It's like this area before overdrive is what I designed it to do. And
For sure.
and I think it's pretty special.
That sounds really great. Yeah, I don't have any compression on yet. I didn't put it on.
You can actually get it if depending on what chords you're playing in guitar, you can get it to bloom a little. Like it actually compresses a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And then this. So then if you have the purple on and then you turn this off, the red, it's all
Warning
off.
you that the boost
Yeah.
is on when you turn this on.
Right. So this
Boost
is
mode is engaged, but the pedal's bypassed. Yes.
Yeah, so it's totally clean or whatever. And nothing's in the circuit.
No
And then
juice.
no juice. Now everything's on. It's just a great clean tone, man. And then this is my compressor for now. Yeah, man. That's pretty great, dude. Yeah, that's an amazing sounding tone shaper, enhancer, like
Thanks, man.
guitar betterizer.
Guitar Betterizer. That's exactly what it is. I don't know. You start running out of weird tone words to describe things.
Yep, a more betterer. Yeah.
Well, and I think the only other comment I have on it, because we haven't talked about the drive a ton, but I always felt like, because when this first came out, and then this is my favorite version of the harmonic drive. It's way better, I think, than any of the other pre-drives. And one of the lifts had it on it too. But the thing is like so many people use overdrives and just turn the gain all the way down, right? And so that's fine. You know, that's honestly fine. If you like
Yeah.
the sound, go for it.
Right.
But the way this is voiced is a lot of times overdrives have a lot of built-in filtering. So like
Mm.
they have a built-in EQ curve that is based on what they want the pedal to sound like when you have the gain at like medium to max. Because
Yes.
most people aren't thinking you're going to play an overdrive on no overdrive. Like that's just not how, especially most full range overdrives. They don't put a lot of time into the low gain section of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so there's actually a lot of filtering going on underneath the hood. By filtering, I mean EQ, like low cut,
Yeah.
high cut,
Yeah.
you know, all sorts of
Mhm.
things changing the EQ. So this is actually designed so that the only EQ happening is actually on top of the box. It's actually,
Mm.
it's actually, and then obviously when you start adding harmonics from an overdrive, that's changing the frequency of your response a bit. You're adding some high end, you're
True.
maybe
Yeah.
tightening the low end a little bit
Yeah.
naturally from the circuit. But it's designed to basically be sweet with the smallest amount of gain. You know, it's to be natural, and it's designed to run in that range to where if you play soft, it's clean, and you dig in a little bit, it digs a little back. It's not really ever meant to be an overdrive pedal, and that's where kind of the pre-drive
Right.
name was kind of a combo of both preamp and
Yeah.
pre before
Yeah.
your overdrives, and also
Yep.
this idea of like edge of breakup, well, or even below that, the pre-drive range.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and so
Right.
where things just starting to get non-linear, when they're starting to compress a little bit, saturate a little bit, and but for me, it's all like often I'll just like the last time I played, I just left that on the entire time and I never
Mhm.
changed it. I just changed how hard I hit my pickup, how hard I hit my guitar
Mhm.
with, and how hard which pickups I used. And I never had, you know, I played a 2 hour set with just the harmonic drive.
That's
No other overdrive pedals, just that, you know,
awesome.
I freaking loved it, man. It was just great. So
Yeah.
I didn't have to tap dance and play, play around with, try to figure out which setting here and there. It was just all about the dynamics putting into it. So, uh,
Yeah.
it's never gonna, rage, and get like crazy going, but
Yeah.
it
Right.
it if you're especially if you're playing a lot of rhythm, there's it just does this thing where it glues a chord really nice. I play in church a lot. I know you do too. So there's I'm not I always feel like half 2/3 of the pedals, if not more, out there. I call it the angry bumblebee. Like the overdrive pedals, it just sounds like you took a bunch of bees and shook them up in a can, and they're pissed off. I'm
Right.
like, I don't actually. I know rock and roll. There's a lot of angry people playing rock and roll,
Mhm.
and a lot of people need that edgy, get
Mhm.
their tension out, aggressive sound. And I'm like, this is just not. I actually just don't want that all the time. Sometimes I just want a really pretty, is that clean, dirty clean? I don't know, but it's
Mhm.
musical, and I'm not,
Yeah.
there's nothing aggressive about it.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
really was my goal with this, is to make something that sounds very pretty and musical, like kind of with any guitar, especially in, all flavors of clean, from
Yeah.
the cleanest of cleans to the very edge of what anyone would ever call a clean tone, and
Yeah. Yeah.
explore that whole range. And
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a unique pedal. There's not too many out there that I feel like make an expose of that area. So
Well, well done. You did a great job, Stephen, on this pedal. I think
thanks,
I
man.
think that, all the your years of experience and trial have finally, like, I love that you're like, I'm done. No more revisions. This is it. This is it, and so, I think a lot of people are like, "Oh yeah, well, if I get that, when's the next one going to come out?" In this day where like everything's just like changing. Well, you're like, "You know what? No, this is this is it." So if you're
The
going to buy
the the
one,
next big
buy one.
announcement on the pre-drive is I'm done making them, and I don't know if that's in 3 years or 30 years, but I'm moving on.
Yeah. Well, you did a great job. This is gonna I know, like you said, it might not be for everyone, and that's totally fine, but I think it will be for a lot of guys who just really, are chasing that great bass tone,
Yeah,
and that, don't need a lot of other stuff and can just want to get back to purity and, kind of a simplicity and do do more with less and have that come through. So especially in our day and age of everything's fast and fake and mass produced and AI, this and that. It's great that, we have someone like you who's making these one at a time by hand, who, it's a really like a passion project of your cumulative life and your experience and your expertise kind of all poured into this thing. And it makes a difference. It feels like that. It sounds like that. And so I wish you nothing but the best and hope this sells like crazy because it deserves to. It's that good.
Well,
So
thank you, man. Well, I sure appreciate it, and I've been just loving the profiles. I don't have any working tube amps to make my own profiles, and I don't need any because I keep getting these good ones come from you. So I appreciate that too, man. I really do.
thanks, Steven.
Yeah.
Well, hey man, it was great getting to chat with you. Great getting to know you a little bit, and I know this probably won't be the last time.
Yeah, let's do it again.
Yep, let's do it again sometime. But thanks a ton.
Yeah,
I
no
appreciate
problem.
your time.
Have a good
Yeah,
one.
man.
Yep.
All
See
right,
ya.
you too. See ya. So if you made it all the way to the end, you're a champion. I know that was a long video, but I hope you did just learn a ton from Steven. He was a joy to get to know, and I really do hope that you get the opportunity to try out one of his pedals, whether it's the pre-drive or the chime or the iron or the gold or something like that. He's got a wide range of offerings from the past and in the present, and I really hope you do go support him. So go check him out at his website. You can also check me out at the Tone Shepherd. All my captures are there for ToneX, Quad Cortex, NAM, Line 6, Fractal, all that stuff. Also want to invite you to my Instagram channel where we talk about all things gear, but also the worship side of things too. As Stephen mentioned, I do play at church. I'm actually a worship pastor. And so I love to integrate both aspects into what I do here at the Tone Shepherd, both the heart side and the craft side. So head over to Instagram, follow me there. If you want a free capture pack of my Benson Chimera, you can snag that there as well on my website. But I think that'll do it for this extremely long video. So until I see you in the next one, be blessed.